Hey, everybody. Welcome to Everything Foodie. We're your virtual program we cooked up here at the Southern California News Group to give you the goods on food culture and trends, and of course, tips for having the most delicious time in our region. I'm Sam Dunn. I'm the senior editor for premium content here at the Southern California News Group. And this program is inspired by our premium magazine for subscribers. And actually, our food and travel issue just went out last Sunday. If you're a subscriber, or if you're not a subscriber, I should say, well, why aren't you a subscriber? Go to scng.com/subscribe and find your local paper and join us and find out what we've got cooking. Speaking of subscribers, I want to say thank you to our Reader Rewards members for supporting our virtual programs. And by the way, if you are a Reader Rewards subscriber attending today, you're automatically entered to win a $50 gift card. So that's not too shabby. Listen, before we get started, I need to tell you a few things. As an attendee, you're muted, but if you have questions, and we hope you do, use the Q&A feature found on the Zoom toolbar on your screen. And certainly if you want to make comments or talk to other audience members, use the chat feature found there as well. Keep in mind, this will be a freewheeling conversation, but you're going to have slides and links to refer to as we go. What else do I need to tell you? Oh, yes, this session will be videotaped and a link is going to be sent to you so you can share or, just revisit some of your favorite moments. It's also going to be posted at scng.com/virtual events. And that's where you can find all of our past virtual shows, as well as see what's coming up next. Anyway, speaking of coming up next, now it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Caitlin Antonios. You might not know it by looking at her, but Caitlin spends most of her time thinking about food, whether it's cooking for herself or her loved ones, watching and learning from cooking shows or interviewing chefs and restaurant owners. Here at the Southern California News Group, she writes and curates the Eat Index OC. That's our weekly food-centered newsletter. And she reports on news and upcoming restaurants. And she writes feature stories on local restaurant tours and covers everything food for the newspapers. Hey, Caitlin, how are you?
Hey, Sam, thanks so much.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here today. Let me start by acknowledging that, listen, as we widely reported at the time, the whole restaurant scene was hit horribly in the last couple of years because of the pandemic. So you're out and about. What does it look like now across the region? How has the culinary scene maybe changed, or how is it revitalized as a result of all this?
Yeah, I think both of those things have happened. It's definitely changed in some ways, and it's definitely been revitalized. It's a really exciting time for restaurants and for diners. I think the pandemic brought forth a lot of issues that people had been talking about, but maybe weren't at the forefront of coverage. So that's, how service industry people are treated, how they're treated by both diners and within the workplace itself. Kind of those gray areas where a restaurant may not necessarily have an HR department if it's, just a small mom and pop shop. The risk that staff put themselves in to serve others. So all of those issues came to light and definitely had been talked about beforehand, but I think became more of kind of like a centered piece of conversation when talking about the restaurant industry. And I think that brought forth a lot of change. I think it made owners and diners more aware of their staff and the needs that the staff may have. A lot of fine dining places, especially maybe more in the LA area, but as well here in OC, I think, some of them even shortened their work week to 4 days because the level of intensity during those service hours is so extreme that they needed to be able to give their staff, 3 days to recover, and were able to make their restaurants more profitable by moving to that model and able to, maintain rent and all of those things. So they ended up being continue to be successful while also balancing or having a more appropriate work-life balance. So from the restaurant side of things, while it was very devastating for a very long time, I think coming out on the other end of it, it's actually ended up with a lot of positive changes. From the dining perspective, I think people are just so excited to try different things
Yeah.
because, being locked in your house, I think, people maybe who didn't cook before and were forced to, you have a different level of appreciation, right? For when you go out to eat something that's really, really good.
Yeah.
I think when you're trying to recreate that at home and maybe it's not, ideal or
Maybe
whatever
it's
the
a
situation
total
is.
failure, Caitlin. Maybe you're talking directly to me. A total, utter failure. Yes. Continue,
Yeah,
please.
I mean, it's tough. It's tough to work on something for an hour and a half. You buy all the ingredients, you invest in it, you spend your time, and then you go down to sit and you're like, ugh, I don't even want this anymore. And it happens all the time, whether you're a great chef or you're not.
Yeah.
So I think that's given people just such an appreciation. And then because travel, and this is definitely like my theory. I've heard people say this to me when I've just been out and about, but my theory of why um, other like ethnic cuisines have become so popular is that, if you go into Little Arabia in Anaheim and you go eat at a Syrian restaurant or an Iraqi restaurant,
Yeah.
like for those, hour and a half that you're sitting there, in some ways you're able to travel, right? You're eating cuisine from a different area. You're around people generally who are from that area, immigrants who know the language, know the culture, and you're interacting and having this wonderful experience. And I think more than ever, people are looking for that. They don't want to eat things that they can cook at home now. They want to
Yes.
go try something new. And I think there's a willingness to learn about those cultures. And the internet and TikTok, all of those things have really helped to make ingredients that may have seemed foreign or weird or confusing or intimidating much more accessible. So I think, yeah, it's been really exciting to be covering things now. And I just feel like it's just going to continue to be more and more exciting. There's so many great places popping up. And again, I just think people are so excited and so willing to, save up and spend on a really nice meal, maybe more than they ever have before.
That is so interesting. I noticed everything you're talking about, I have experienced myself, my family, and I have experienced. I'm curious, you mentioned TikTok, and you mentioned being out there, of course. What trends are you seeing? Can you identify anything right of the moment that is of interest to you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we'll speak with Jenn in a bit, but she wrote recently about sort of the caviar trend. So that is a huge one right now because caviar, which has kind of historically been this very, and I don't want to like encroach on Jenn's territories, but I'll keep it quick. But
To that
caviar, which has been sort of traditionally very elite and, special, and you kind of only get it at, you know, very fancy schmancy parties, like now has become almost like a snack that people can eat with Doritos and sour cream or creme fraiche.
Doritos.
Yeah,
Doritos.
no,
Okay.
I promise you, I will show
Okay.
the evidence. But yeah, it's become a snacking item. And that is something that I think is just like a fascinating um, phenomenon, which I think is partially due to social media and partially due to various restaurant owners that have incorporated it in a very like, sort of almost casual way into their restaurants. So like, for instance, Popular at South Coast Plaza, you could get an appetizer of fried chicken with lebne, which is a Middle Eastern, like, I don't want to say sour cheese, but it's like a creamy fermented yogurt. It's really good with caviar on top. So like that replaces the creme fraiche. So caviar is a huge one right now. And then on that same vein, I think like twisting classics. So, instead of doing a Doritos with sour cream and caviar on top, this is a piece of fried chicken with lebne with caviar on top. Or just like, getting a Waldorf that has a bit of a twist with it or
Yeah.
something like that. Like a lot of chefs are really, taking an opportunity to take these classics and put a twist on them to kind of make people feel like they're eating something new and fresh that's still in some ways familiar. And then I think people, like I mentioned earlier, willing to pay for experiences maybe more than they ever have before. So chef's tables. Jenn also wrote a story, an incredible story about that. Those are huge right now. Like the Irvine Marriott next to the location next to John Wayne.
Yeah.
They have a chef's table experience that is really interesting because it's very collaborative. I think a lot of chefs in general have come to a point where they're more willing to work with their customers and their diners for these more customizable experiences when, previously a lot of fine dining chefs were like, you get what you get. Like, this is what I'm going to present to you, and it's going to be omakase style, and you're going to eat it and enjoy it. And now I think there's been a shift where like there's maybe less of a barrier, and chefs are willing to hear feedback and work with their customers, especially for these very, expensive dining experiences. They're willing to have kind of more customizable things. So if you wanted to go to the Irvine one, the Marriott experience, you'd be dining inside of the chef's, space. So you'd be in the kitchen. You'd kind of be brought in by one of the staff members through the back of the kitchen. They're going to escort you so that you make sure you don't like run into any staff that's actively cooking. You're going to sit in this beautiful setting, seeing the busy kitchen around you. And you're going to be able to have previously customized what your meal is with the chef. So you're going to be able to say like, look, I have this dietary restriction. I tend to not eat this. I really like this. And he will craft the menu. And it's just, I think, I don't want to put like a timeline of like when I don't think that would have happened, but I think that this attitude is definitely more of a current and, it's something that's emerging right now. And then just very quick.
Let me just note that truly, from my own experience, that's a real paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Right? From the very kind of hierarchical attitude of I am the chef, I am the creator, you will eat what I put in front of you. How dare you ask anything to this democratic model almost. It's fascinating.
Yeah, and chefs have admitted that. Chefs have said like, yeah, a couple years ago, I would not even consider doing customized, dinner menus with special guests. Like I would not even have thought of that being something that I would do. And now there's a willingness to have those conversations for those very kind of special experiences. And I think chefs have really enjoyed those experiences as well, at least from the ones that I've spoken to.
Interesting. Well, we'll talk more about this, but we have alluded to the mythical Jenn. And so let's bring her into the conversation. One of your fellow food writers and one of my dear friends, Jenn Tanaka. Hey, Jenn.
Hi.
Hey, so just so for the rest of you, in case you don't know Jenn pens stories for Eater as well as for our publications at the Southern California News Group, including Premium Magazine. Full disclosure, Jenn and I used to work together at Coast Magazine, which was a much beloved lifestyle publication here in Orange County for many years. And she probably taught me more about food in that time we worked together than any single person in my life. She's also worked for magazines that you might have heard of, like, I don't know, Food and Wine and the New Yorker. Fun fact, part of why she's so great at writing about food is that she earned a culinary arts degree at the Institute of Culinary Education in New York. So, hey, girl.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, we already evoked your name in this trend, but one, and I'm sure we're going to get back to trends. I want you to continue with that, Caitlin, and have Jenn join in. But Jenn, you and I talk about all of this all the time, but for the record, for our audience, what is a foodie? I was raised on diner food, as you know, but so what is a foodie to you? What does that mean?
Well, and there's nothing wrong with diner food. I have a special place in my heart for diners, delis, all of that good stuff. So honestly, I feel like being a foodie is just having passion and just really wanting to be curious about what you're eating and what's in your community and just hearing the stories behind that and touching upon what Caitlin had said with the idea that the chef is this hierarchical being and coming from, being classically trained. Yeah, there is definitely a big part of that. But at the root of it, even in fine dining, it's all about hospitality. people want to create this environment that's very special and that's warm and welcoming. And it is about the food, but it's also about the company you're with, what you're drinking, whether it's alcoholic or not, and just kind of having a special memory. I think that is what everybody wants, whether you're eating the most fabulous caviar bump or you're just having a great cheeseburger. I mean, there's a place for all of it. And in Orange County, we've been so lucky. In the past decade, we've seen so many people gravitate towards food in a way where they're studying about cultures and origins, and people are actually taking risks and setting up little mom and pop shops in different places where you wouldn't think. Bigger retailers like South Coast Plaza and the Irvine Company are also taking chances on concepts that you wouldn't have seen 15, 20 years ago when we were getting a lot of chains. So I think that's really exciting. Coming out of the pandemic, I feel like you and Caitlin were mentioning, everybody was so pent up. There was that desire to get out again, to see the world, to eat good food. And I think it's kind of all unfolding right now. And chefs are experimenting with new ways of bringing this party back to life, right? They want to kind of have an inviting atmosphere, but they want to have something that you're going to talk about or you're going to tell your friends about, because that's essentially what's helping business right now. It's word of mouth and everybody just kind of realizing we're all in it together.
Caitlin, did you want to add anything to that? I think that she co-signed everything you were talking about.
Yeah, no, I mean, she said it better than I did, so I'll leave it at that.
No, not at all.
You are both equally fabulous. So, hey, Jenn, I want to bring up, you wrote a very popular piece for Premium Magazine last year about certain places in Southern California you have to eat at in order to consider yourself a real foodie. And I wanted you to talk about that a little bit. And also, if it's been a year since you did that piece, are there any new places to add to the list?
Oh, definitely. Well, I want to toot our own horn because they just announced the James Beard outstanding chef and nominees for outstanding restaurants, and several of the people that we had listed last year are on there, which is great. So you're seeing Southern California and Orange County in particular, thanks to Carlos Salgado at Taco Maria and everything that they're doing at Knife Plate. You're seeing a lot of things really evolving and happening. Chef Nikki Nakayama, who we featured in that piece last year, is also nominated for Outstanding Chef, which is great because she's not only local, but she's a woman, and that's really rare to see in that category. So that's exciting. And Ototo, which is this cool little sake bar in Echo Park, which was under the radar for the longest time. They actually got a James Beard nod as well for Outstanding Spirits program. So usually that's reserved for a chicer bar or a really exquisite wine program, but they were able to import these really interesting seasonal Japanese sakes and have them on draft, and people were just talking about them and kind of learning about the sake tradition. I feel like when you go into, like Caitlin said, to an omakase, and it's just, this is the way, people kind of get trained into ordering the same sake as well, right? The same things that go with the dishes that they've always used to eat before. So now people are willing to take a risk. Maybe that $20 bottle of sake is a good bet because it's something new. It has a story, and you're able to kind of, like you said, transport yourself for a little bit just through food or drink.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of you in the audience, I think our production manager, Julie Corlett, has posted the links for those stories that Jenn did. And the other story we have coming that just came out rather is the piece that you did, Jenn, on the experiences and gadgets that every foodie has to have now for 2023. What are some highlights there you can call out for people?
Well, a really fun one that I kind of stumbled upon, since it's Disney's as a company, their 100th anniversary, they have all of these great experiences at the local parks, but I was able to find out about these guided adventures that they host. And the one that I was actually most interested in going on myself, it's called the Adventures by Disney Rhine River Cruise. And it's a food and wine experience where you travel through France and Germany, and you go to all these historic sites, but a lot of them are geared to somebody who's interested in food. So at one of the locations in France, you're making macaroons with a chef on the boat, and you're watching all of the beautiful scenery go by. It's a partnership with Ama Waterways, which is a different type of cruise company, which is very smaller, and it's smaller and more intimate, but also very high end. So some of the places you're going to are super exclusive. Like one place is this, I'm going to butcher it because my French is not the best. So Sam, please help me. It's the Cave Historique des Hospices, I think. And then, but it was essentially originally a hospital that was founded in 1395, and they've converted it into a wine cellar, and you can go and visit it. And there's a wine museum there. And at the very base, they bottle the wine, and you get to be a part of it and get to see all of these ancient wine barrels, some of them dating back to 1472. I mean, it's kind of amazing, right? Being like, as Americans, we don't really even have anything that dates back that far. So it's kind of exciting to be a part of history, but also learning about a craft. And I was lucky enough to interview Allie Coyle, who has Wine Works for Everyone in Mission Viejo. And her big thing is about just making wine more accessible for all, and just kind of breaking down that barrier of intimidation, where it's like, you can try a bottle made from a little purveyor, and guess what? It's going to be maybe even better than that big label that costs like 5 times as much. So it's about kind of building these relationships, even locally, and knowing like where to go to get the right sources. So there's a plug for Wine Works for Everyone.
I love that. And Caitlin, that dovetails with what you were saying earlier about the craving for experience, right?
Yes, definitely.
We have a question from Elizabeth Waters. I'll read it for you. She says, having migrated toward a more plant-based, lower fat lifestyle for my health and the planet, can you speak to restaurant trends toward providing more plant-based options, non-meat alternatives? Can you recommend the best restaurants for plant-based eating? She says, I'm an avid cook and self-described foodie, so I would really appreciate finding plant-based dining, which is both beautiful and delicious. We also love experiencing other cultures through food. She lives in the San Fernando Valley, but travels down to Orange County as well. So anything in LA, anything in our region.
Well, you know what I've been really excited about? The lab. They have a couple of cool concepts.
And
one is
for those
that's in Costa Mesa. It's called the anti-malls, because they kind of go against the whole big corporation idea. So they have 2 really cool vegan concepts. One is Seabird's Kitchen, which also has a location in Los Angeles, and the other one is Bella Creamery. And I love the story of Bella Creamery because it was started by 2 friends who are also plant-based, and they would go out to dinner with each other all the time in LA and just different places, and they would have a great time, but then there wouldn't be anything for dessert. And then that was like one of the biggest gaps, I guess, that for them. So they created their own. And the ice cream, I've had several of their flavors and they're so good. My kids like them and they don't even realize that they're vegan. So those are 2 that are like very near and dear to my heart right now. Another one that's always a good tried and true is Gracias Madre over in Newport Beach. I feel like they're doing such interesting things with Mexican food and vegan cuisine. You wouldn't necessarily think that it goes together, but if you think about the history of Mexican food, it so can be plant-based. They're just like lends itself to using all of those great vegetables and those fresh flavors. So and they put out a cookbook recently too. So since you're a cook, that might be a great place to start. And then you can go try some of the food there and then get some inspiration and cook it at home.
I love that. Thanks, Jen. That was a good one. Gracias Madre is one of my favorite places. Caitlin, anything else that you could think of?
Yeah, also in Costa Mesa, there's Veg, which is 100% plant-based. So that is a great one. It's kind of like, Jen, would you say it's like fast food? I guess we would categorize it maybe, but
like fast casual.
Fast casual, yeah, it's fast casual. If you want something in LA, this is not San Fernando, but like in West Hollywood, there's Butcher's Daughter, which is also 100% plant-based. I know that during the week they do like a morning brunch, which I think is only like $20. It is during the week, so obviously you'd have to be kind of flexible with your work schedule, but it's $20. kind of beautiful layout for like a plant-based brunch that's super popular. So I would recommend reservations if you plan on doing that. But yeah, those were two that came to mind kind of immediately that are doing some really cool things in that space.
I
Love
have
it.
one last suggestion.
Yeah.
Kareem's Falafel in Little Arabia in Anaheim. They have falafels that you could actually buy at Whole Foods or at like the different markets in Orange County, but they have this great wrap, which hummus, baba ganoush, and it's just a lot of fresh flavors, and it's all plant-based. So that's another one that you could do.
And we have it that this is wonderful. We have another question. Elizabeth, I hope those suggestions help you out. We have another question from Kelly Miller, who says, I recently found out I'm gluten intolerant and finding a larger community than I thought. Have you seen chefs, restaurants who are catering to the celiac gluten intolerant community? I'm finding vegetarian vegan food relies heavily on gluten unless I want a salad, and gluten is hidden in many veggie protein-based meals. That's an interesting question. How about it for Kelly?
So I am going to jump in. Sorry, Jen, but I actually try to avoid gluten when I can because I also find that I'm a little bit gluten sensitive. So yes, it's tough. I think, Indian, like certain cuisines, it's very easy to kind of eat and feel like you're not missing out or substituting anything weird. So a lot of Mexican food has corn-based either masa or masa flour or, corn tortillas. So like taco masita, you could go get the tacos there and they're phenomenal. And then a lot of Indian restaurants, like they'll fry, their pakoras with chickpea flour or something like that. So sometimes they'll indicate, sometimes you kind of just have to know, like, if they cook this in a traditional way, it'll be used with chickpea flour. So you're good to go. Puesto has a new pastry chef.
Puesto?
Yeah. Sneak
Yeah.
peek for a story I'm going to do. But they have an incredible pastry chef, and she made this probably one of the best desserts I've ever had. This like mango multi-layered dessert, and it was using coconut flour, and so that's just how she made it. And I was talking to her a little bit about the decision, like was it a conscious decision to be gluten-free, and she was just like, no, coconut flour is just amazing, and it's convenient that it's gluten-free, but like there's just so many cool ingredients. So same thing with like Asian cooking, buckwheat noodles. If they're made with just buckwheat, sometimes you have to look on packages, like buckwheat noodles will also have wheat flour. So you just kind of have to be careful. Rice cakes, if it's made with just rice and salt and water instead of, some of them use wheat flour. So there's a lot of cuisines where you just kind of have to do a little bit of research. That's kind of what I tend to do. I'm not a big fan of like lettuce burgers or anything like that, because I do feel like I'm missing out. So what I try to gear my orders to is just knowing that I'm getting something authentic, and just authentically it happens to be gluten-free. So that's the approach that I've taken as I've sort of started to steer away.
Love that. Jen, anything to add for Kelly?
No, that's great. And the thing that I'm finding that's really difficult with people who have a gluten aversion is that even though sometimes there will be dishes that are gluten-free, depending on how severe your allergy is, it still could be prepared in the same kitchen. They might use some of the same like plating or utensils to plate things. So you kind of really still do have to be careful, even if the menu item does say gluten-free. You just kind of have to ask and just be really proactive about your experience.
That's great advice. As some of you know, my stepdaughter, some of you know, Jen knows, my stepdaughter has a peanut allergy, and we have to be super careful about everything you're saying. Okay, listen, one thing we haven't talked about that is crucial to every dining experience is drinking. And excuse me. Yeah, here's the drink guy. Excuse me, hold on just one second. Clearly, I need a drink. The person who just beamed in is our contributor, Crawford McCarthy. Crawford left the corporate world several years ago to pursue his passion for cocktails and food, and quickly became one of the most trusted voices in our region for food and drink coverage. At the start of the pandemic, he launched his own crowdfunded media platform, The Best Seats, and The Best Seats podcast, which is a must listen for anyone interested in the food industry. And I often get him to write for premium, so you can find him in our pages. Hey, Crawford, how are you?
I am fantastic. How is everybody doing?
Good, good. Well, listen, we have evoked drinking a few times here with sake and such, but you and I were talking briefly a couple weeks ago about the drink scene, and you were saying how specific it is to different parts of our region. I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. What does it look like across the region?
It's so varied and there's so much to unpack. Really quickly, Elizabeth, I want to re-answer your question really quick. If you're an avid home cook, I grabbed it off my back shelf. On Vegetables is a fantastic cookbook. It's by Chef Jeremy Fox, who's got Rustic Canyon and Birdie G's, both of which are in Santa Monica. Find that. It's not necessarily a vegetarian cookbook, but really, really beautiful stuff in there. I wanted to chime in earlier, but I wanted everybody to get their answers in, but that's a really good one. The drinking scenes all over they're varied, they're different. You can't talk about the bar scene without talking about the pandemic, because while the pandemic affected restaurants, it devastated bars. It was one thing to be eating outside, but it wasn't just bars. It wasn't just your local dive bar. It wasn't your sports bar that was shut down. Even restaurant bars were shut down. The bar, kind of that meeting area where you would come and you would meet for a drink before your table, or, hang out and get a happy hour drink. Those ceased to be personable. Those became production lines for to-go cocktails, and the personality and the enthusiasm of a great night out at a bar was really lost. Again, restaurants were open, bars were not. So it was something that we've really been kind of clawing back to. And while people really wanted to go out and dine again, that desire to go out and have a great night out drinking, whether it's wine, cocktails, beer, whatever it is, took a little while to get back on its feet. Now what you're seeing is this, just instead of kind of rolling out slowly, everybody seems to have just dialed it up to 11. You talk about places like Los Angeles, the craft cocktail scene has just exploded. Now Los Angeles arguably has some of the best bars, not just on the West Coast, but in the country. Bars that are competing for top 50 arguments in the world. Places like Thunderbolt in Los Angeles are phenomenal. Bathtub Gin, if you're looking for more of that kind of speakeasy style. Broken Shaker. You go down to San Diego, you've got this kind of relaxed atmosphere. Places like Hamburger Hut, which is in Encinitas, I believe. You go in there, it's basically kind of a riff on a smash burger In-N-Out place. It's got one of the best craft cocktail bars around. You can go in and get an In-N-Out style burger and also sip on a frozen Negroni that has no right being as good as it is in a little burger joint. You go further down south to San Diego, you have the emergence of lo-fi bars, which are basically cocktail lounges. But instead of kind of music really kind of blasting in your ears, you're having DJ spin vinyl records all night long and just kind of really lower, relax things. The wine bar has now transitioned from kind of, we kind of talked about the gatekeeping of wine being removed by people like Ali Coyle, which again, if you're in the Orange County area, please, her restaurants and her wine lists are phenomenally good. But the wine bar is now relaxed. You're getting independent producers. You're getting natural wines. You're getting small batch wines. You're getting people from Santa Barbara out to way, way, way distant parts of Europe, like Slovenia. And it's just kind of really emerging all over. Even the dive bar, the beloved dive bar, which is becoming an extinct creature, is no longer that kind of place where you walk in and it's just it's kind of sticky like a bad movie theater and everything's just off a little bit. Dive bars are now coming back. Places like Waltz Bar in Los Angeles are this kind of beautiful amalgam of kind of hipster and old school, but fun and cheap drinks where you're getting like a Bud Light, but also an Underberg shot, and just these weird combinations that are fun. And there's just a liveliness. Bartenders in general, a lot of chefs moved around during the pandemic, but bartenders especially were nomadic. They're nomadic people by nature, more so than maybe any other kind of position in the restaurant. And you had people leaving Orange County to go to San Diego. You had San Diego going to Los Angeles. You had Los Angeles going to Europe and then coming back. And people kind of brought those experiences with them. So it's really, really been fun to kind of watch all these different places, not just open, but open with a fervor. And people want to go out. And if you want to talk about how restaurants are recovering financially, talk to a bar owner, because chances are their books are good.
Love it. Just a shout out to a dive bar that I frequented for many years in Los Angeles, the Roost in Atwater Village. You guys know the Roost. Talk about a dive bar. But I, for one, don't drink anymore, partly because I did so much of it early on. But one of the pieces I loved that you did for us, Crawford, was the piece on the mocktail trend. What's going on with that? And where can an abstainer like me get something more exciting than a Shirley Temple, you know?
The one thing that you're seeing is, again, everybody was locked down. Everybody was buying food. Everybody was buying booze. A lot of people drank during the pandemic. And what that did when you were kind of in that isolation, whether you're industry or non-industry, was you had a lot of time to reflect. And there's a great many people that realized that maybe alcohol wasn't for them. Maybe they're just not good at drinking. Maybe it was a health thing. Maybe it's just a long-standing family thing. Maybe they just were kind of over it. A lot of companies and a lot of groups have really moved on and developed some phenomenal non-alcoholic products. The key belief behind it, really pushed by a lot of craft bartenders, is that in a bar, everybody should feel welcome. If you're all going to go out for a night of drinks, you shouldn't have to be the friend shunned in the corner with nothing more to be offered than a Diet Coke or some amalgam of fruit juices that's basically a terrible, terrible tiki drink without the delicious rum.
You just covered it. Anyway, please, yes.
A lot of bartenders are looking at the aspects of what makes a great cocktail, and then basically building a great cocktail is kind of like Mr. Potato Head. You're just picking apart different pieces and plugging them in different spots. You want to swap out a base spirit. It's easy enough to do. Well, now they're doing that by removing the alcohol and injecting new flavors. A lot of people are coming out with non-alcoholic products. Morgan McLaughlin, who is the head distiller at Amass Botanics in Los Angeles, where they make beautiful gin, a beautiful non-alcoholic spirit, a beautiful vodka. And that's a really hard thing for me to say personally. She's recently partnered with Katy Perry, of all people, and they have launched a brand called Dessois. It's DE_SOI. They're these non-alcoholic aperitifs. They come in a beautiful wine bottle style packaging. They also come in small cans. They're phenomenal. They're not just sweet. They're not just fruit juice. There's bitter elements to them. There's herbaceous elements to them. There's vegetal elements to them. There's something that you interact with and it provokes you, and you kind of find yourself questioning it the same way you would a really delicious aperitivo cocktail or something with a lot of depth and a lot of creativity. So frankly, it's never been a better time to be sober or be the designated driver for a night or just take a night off. There's wonderful, wonderful drinks out there. And I would say that at most of the bars, maybe not all the restaurant bars out there, but the majority of bars, you're going to find a bartender that can take care of you.
That's interesting. Let me just follow up with that question. Part of the dining experience is pairing alcohol, wines, etc., with the food. Do these new mocktails serve that purpose as well? Do they pair with food?
Yeah, they do, because creatively they're from the same vein of the people that are now bringing in new spirits. And I'll get back to the mocktail part in a second, but my favorite trend is that if you think of any good restaurant in your area, anybody who's watching this right now, close your eyes, think of any good restaurant that you go to. You can probably picture that back bar. You can probably name the 5 spirits. You can name their top whiskey. You can name their vodka. You can see their well in your mind. Post-pandemic, because a lot of, with the bars closed, liquor industry, for whatever reason, didn't really get that hurt because people were buying at home. But who did get hurt were the small craft distillers. You're seeing a lot of bars now, places like Mirate in Los Angeles, that has this amazing agave spirits program, breaking the trend of just presenting the same bottles to people. They're introducing small producers. They're introducing new flavors. They're challenging expectations. That translated into the mocktail scene as well. Dessois is kind of the example that I use, but what Morgan McLaughlin did was introduce a product that you can go. I grabbed some at Bevmo just this past weekend because I have a friend who's not drinking right now. They were very democratically priced, and the flavor expressions in them are wonderful. And it just comes from that same sense of, we're not just going to make a product and get it out there to turn a profit. We're going to do it to make it better. Because if you're going to sit somewhere and not drink, or if you're going to drink, you might as well do it to the best of your ability and support some great people while you do it.
I love that. Julie put in the chat, the link to your mocktail story, so we don't have to go through every place. But do check that out, everyone, if you're interested in great places to go. For Crawford, we have a question. Actually, Jen and Caitlin, you can jump in on this too, because I know you also have reported on it. What are the best places? Elizabeth Waters wants to know, what are the best places for small brewery craft beers? She says, I love a dark beer, which you can cut with a knife and fork, like Old Rasputin Russian Imperial Stout by Kamika Brewery.
I mean, Boy, unpacking the beer debate. I mean, anytime you want to unpack anything in the spirits industry, you're basically begging for a Reddit thread to be opened up to counteract everything you say. But I have my favorites. First of all, I'm a big proponent. Drink what you want. Drink what tastes good. If you're a vodka soda person, drink that. If you're a double IPA person, drink that. Whatever your thing is, don't feel shame for drinking it. Drink whatever it is. Personally, some of my favorite breweries, I think hands down, in Anaheim, California, my favorite one right now is Everywhere Beer Co. It's a bunch of people that were formerly working at the brewery, which is BRUE. I'm going to butcher the name, but they were former people at the brewery. They left. They opened Everywhere Ballpark about 6 months ago, and they have just made banger after banger after banger ever since. They're some of the nicest guys on the planet. The entire team is phenomenal. The tasting room is right near Angel Stadium. So even for Los Angeles, it's not impossible to get from. I know it can be a little bit of a drive for some people. They're moving into more distribution as we speak, so you may have to kind of ask around. Other places I love. Now, this isn't traditionally beer, but I know that they are going to have beers on hand. Benny Boy Brewing up in Los Angeles. It's a cidery. So they are making their own ciders. I've been keeping up in touch with the owners for years. I had them on my podcast about 1.5 years before they opened. Benny Boy rocks. It's a really fun place. It's big. It's open. They bring in different food pop-ups. They brought in people like the Hungry Jew and other food trucks. They've done major pop-ups. It's a ton of space. There's always a lot of dogs to pet, which is always great for everybody. And while they may not make traditional kind of beers all the time, I know that they are very friendly with everybody. They bring a lot of people in and they have fun. The last one I'd also recommend is Native Son in downtown Los Angeles. They have a sister restaurant in the Inland Empire, and they have one in Santa Ana here. Native Son took over the old Modern Times in downtown LA. I want to say the Arts District. I don't remember the exact area, but they have brought in a great brewmaster. And again, they're just kind of getting their feet going, maybe about 3 months now making their own beers, but really, really some delicious stuff. And I would definitely check out Native Son.
Great. Jen, Caitlin, anything to add to that list?
Well, I usually tap Will D over at Chapman Crafted. While they're not necessarily known for those dark, really stout beers, he's a great resource. And I just kind of ask what he's been tasting recently, because he's able to just go around and try so many different things. The guys at Heritage Barbecue over in San Juan Capistrano, they opened their own little place in Oceanside, and they're doing craft beer too. So a lot of stuff is happening all over, and it's just, you just kind of have to go places. Even with wineries, the people who are in the industry taste a lot of things. So when I was talking to Allie Coyle, bringing her back again, she was actually thanking the local craft beer industry for being so robust and experimental, because it's gotten people really excited about trying new boutique wines. And so I feel like if you, actually another great place is High Times over in Orange County. We have a great liquor store that's family owned, and they have everything. And their beer selection and the people that are working in the store are so well versed, and they would be able to give you the best selection spot on of what you're like wanting to taste. So those are my 3 recommendations.
Yeah, High Times is in Costa Mesa. Totally recommend them as a source of information. Caitlin, anything to add before we?
I was gonna say the same. I'm excited to try Heritage. I've never been down to the Oceanside location, so I haven't had a chance. But now they have 12 of their beers on tap at the San Juan location, so definitely going to be going there and checking those out. Steady Brewing, they have their brewery in Long Beach, and then opened a restaurant and bar in Fountain Valley. Really cool spot. It's like next to a gym. It's very low key. Like you wouldn't realize you're going there when you enter that little space, but it's really cool. Dennis, who's the brewmaster there, he's there most of the time, even though he's back and forth between Long Beach. He knows so much about, and he's really willing to work with someone to find out what they like. I also just very, very quickly wanted to mention that if you're going to be at Coachella and you don't want to drink, the new bar, which is I think based in Venice, I'm not sure about that, but they're non-alcoholic from LA, and they are, I think, the first ever non-alcoholic partner for Coachella. So if you're going to be at Coachella and you don't want to drink, but you want some great drinks, that might be an option for people.
Love that. We have one quick question that I want to get to, and it's from Elizabeth Waters again. She says they love visiting distilleries and distillery tour. Can you recommend any in the LA, Southern California region?
Yeah, I would absolutely head up to Ventura Spirits. There's a lot of people doing amazing stuff in California right now, but for my money, Ventura Spirits just makes some of the coolest, most delicious products. A lot of them are kind of limited. Most recently, I tried like a brandy that was like, I want to say it was a strawberry based brandy that they did. They make a limoncello that will knock your socks off. They make also a lot of more standard and traditional spirits, aperitivos, things like that. But Ventura Spirits is really, really awesome. Full disclosure, I haven't done the distillery tour myself. I've only done offsite tastings. To my knowledge, they do a distillery tour, but regardless of how big or small it is, check out Ventura Spirits. They're making some phenomenal products. You will not taste a bad thing there.
Great, awesome. Anything to add there, girls? No? Good. Well, listen, all right, you guys. We're getting toward the end, but I have to ask you, what and where are you dying to eat right now that you haven't maybe yet, or you have and you want to go back to? And while they're telling us, everybody, can I ask you please to answer a quick question? We have a poll that's going to come up on your screen, and we just would like you to answer a question for us. But go ahead. What do you want to eat? Where do you want to eat?
I'll jump in first. Everybody mentioned Heritage Barbecue. They recently opened up their Oceanside location. I was there very briefly, but I want to get down there again. They also just launched a speakeasy inside of that restaurant called Ladies Love Outlaws. The head bartender that they tapped is really, really talented. They're doing a really, really awesome program there. Also in Oceanside is Matsu. Matsu is run by Chef Willie Ike. It's basically a small Japanese concept, really, really delicious food. I think somebody that you're going to be hearing about a lot in the future. And then up in Los Angeles, Mirate. Mirate is just been getting praise after praise after praise. I'm an agave spirits person personally, so I can't wait to work my way through the back bar. But I've heard that the kitchen is absolutely nothing to mess around with. They're doing really good stuff and have just gotten high praise ever since they opened those doors.
Great, awesome. Anything in South Bay? We just had a note like, please, guys, what's going on in South Bay? Anybody?
Well, I'm very into Ryla, which is over in Hermosa Beach, which is kind of like the South Bay area. Their desserts are incredible. I had this layered matcha dessert from them, and I've been thinking about it for months, but the menu in general is just so creative, and it's very unexpected for Hermosa Beach. I went with people who actually frequent the area, and 3 or 4 times that night, they were like, this is so good for Hermosa Beach. So that's something I would recommend South Bay. As far as the place I want to get back to, Addison, because it's Southern California's first 3-star Michelin restaurant. We were lucky enough to interview Chef William Bradley a few years back for Coast, and he's just always been so thoughtful and just interesting and ahead of the curve as far as like what we should be eating or what we should try to show people the food industry can do, and as far as the bigger picture. And San Laurel in downtown LA, which is Jose Andres's restaurant, which has a great view of the Walt Disney Performing Arts Center. Those are mine.
That's awesome. How about you, Caitlin?
I have not been to Fable and Spirit, so that is like number one. Gotta go there. I know.
Oh,
Go with you.
Yeah, we should have a lunch there. Absolutely. Yeah, so Fable and Spirit, definitely. I've been to Mazette, and I really want to go back at South Coast Plaza. Incredible Middle Eastern, Mediterranean food. And then in LA, one of the hardest reservations I have not been able to get is Pizzeria Bianco. So that one, I'm like, I'm there at 10 p.m. or, midnight, whatever. I have not been able to get a reservation there. So maybe I'll just go to the Arizona one. It might be a little bit easier, but that one has been tough. So that is on my list as well.
I love it. Well, okay. Well, this has been incredibly fun, but now it's time to say goodbye to all our family. Hopefully we can do this again, you guys. This was amazing. And thanks everybody for joining us. So appreciate your insights, Caitlin and Jen and Crawford. These were awesome. Also, I have to call out, thank you to our production manager, Julie Corlett, who's the Oz behind the curtain. She makes everything run. We couldn't do it without her. And remember, if you want great content on the food scene, subscribe to Caitlin's Eat Index OC, and also to our newspapers by giving us a call at 877-469-6133. If you'd like to share your thoughts from today, or if you have suggestions or additional questions, or hey, if you just want to yell at me, send me an email at sdunn@scng.com, or you can also email events@scng.com. Until next time, everybody, bon appetit. Bye-bye.